Hello, in this video, I'll take you through our vehicle maintenance template. Now on the screen, I've opened up the template and it's powered with Microsoft Excel. So you need to have Excel, a version from 2010, installed on your computer. Now once you open up the document, you arrive at the dashboard, and this holds 3 buttons to navigate to the 3 major sections of the template. We have the vehicle section where you add all of your cars, the requisition section where you enter daily requests, and the report section, which holds multiple template reports. Now in this video, I'm going to go through all the sections. I'm going to start with the first, and to open it, you simply click on the button. So notice as I click, it takes me to that section of the template. So now we're in the first section of the template. Now all sections have been formatted identically. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the section title, and this tells you at any point in time the section you're on. So notice it says vehicle database, so you know this is where you document all the cars you own. Now to the right of this, we have 2 buttons, to add a new car and to delete an existing car. Above this, we have our navigation pane. Now this holds several labels. So you notice we have dashboard, vehicle, and so on. Now each label represents a button to navigate to a particular section of the template. So notice if I click on the dashboard label, it takes me back to the dashboard where we initially started. Recall I then clicked on the first button and that navigated me to the vehicle section. So each label here represents a button to navigate to a particular section of the template. Below the 2 buttons here, we have our data table, and this is where all vehicles you own will be listed. At the top, you notice we have column headers, and these are attributes you're expected to supply per car that you enter. Now to add a new car, you simply click on the new car button at the top, and this pops up an Excel form. Now Excel forms provide a simple way to transfer data or to store data to this table up here. So you notice the column headers I referenced earlier on, they're equally listed on the form as labels. The user simply asks to supply values to the white portion currently highlighted on the screen. Now I'm going to enter the first car that the company owns. So first I indicate the brand. Once I'm done entering the brand, to move to the next field, which in this case is the model, I can either click with my mouse. So notice if I click on the white field, my cursor moves there. I can click to move across. Or a more convenient way is to make use of the tab key on your keyboard. So the tab key will move me from my current field to the next field for data entry. So here I indicate the model. Now, not all fields are mandatory. So it's possible you might not at any point in time know maybe the model, or you might not know the plate number. So you can leave those fields blank and you can populate it later on. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the model. Next, the vehicle type. I'm going to leave that blank. I'm going to enter the transmission. The engine type is gas, the year 2018, and Excel will automatically enter today's date as the purchase date. However, you can modify the date portion, the month portion, or the year portion. So let's assume we purchased this car on the 1st of January. So I'm going to change the dates to 1. I'm equally going to change the months to 1, and I'm going to leave the year as 2018. Next, I enter the chassis number. Now this is just random data. These are not valid details. This is just for demonstration purposes. Next, the plate number. Now if you don't yet have a plate number for the car, you can leave this blank. As I said earlier on, you can always update the value. So I'm going to leave this blank. I'm going to enter the current mileage of the car. So let's assume 12,000. And the miles is in kilometers. So the template has been designed to support kilometers and liters. Now this can be modified to support gallons and miles. So by default, it supports kilometers and liters, but we can switch this to gallons and miles, but it can't support both. So it's either or. So currently it supports kilometers for the mileage and liters for the fuel. Next, we indicate the insurance details. I'm going to leave that blank, the current fuel level. Now when entering the template, when entering a car to the template, it's advisable to fill up the tank. That's the easiest way to know the current liters in the car, as usually the gauge doesn't tell you the exact number. So let's assume that this is the liter capacity of this car, so 60.5666 liters based on the manufacturer's data. So this is the tank. So let's assume the tank is full, so it's currently 60.5666 liters in the car. Next, you enter the kilometer per liter. This is also based on manufacturer's data, and let's assume that for 1 liter the template uses 11.2359. Now you can enter this in, you can round this up to whole numbers. I just prefer to use 4 digits so that I can be as accurate as I can be, so 4 decimal places, but you can round this up to an whole number, removing all decimals to do 2 decimal places. Pretty much the choice is yours. So let's assume that for 1 liter of fuel, it's going to take you 11 kilometers. Next, I indicate the fuel tank. Now, the fuel tank is the capacity of the car. So this car, what is the capacity of the fuel tank? And as I said earlier on, this is going to be the same, 60.566. Okay, so this is the capacity, and I currently fill the tank as I'm entering the data to this template. So it's advisable you either enter it blank, so this is going to be 0, or you enter it as full tank. Next, you indicate the daily rental fee, because assume that you rent your vehicle's house. So let's assume it's 40,000 for any company to rent this car on a daily basis. Now, the depreciation, as you specify to us, is for a period of 5 years. So it has a 5 years usefulness period. So the template will automatically calculate that based on the purchase value. So depending on the purchase price you enter, the template automatically calculates the yearly depreciation. It's also assumed that the car has a salvage value of 0. So what that means is that after 5 years, the value of the car goes to 0. So depending on the purchase price, so let's assume we purchased this for 16 million. The template will automatically calculate the depreciation based on that. So once you click on enter, it's going to store that car to the database. So you notice that all the values we supplied are listed on the first row. So if I keep scrolling to the side, you notice the additional columns are displayed. And functionalities have been added to automatically lock the first column. Now the first column is the vehicle ID, and this is a formula generated column. So Excel will automatically join the model, or the brand, with the model of the car and the year. So every car will have a unique vehicle ID, which will be used in other sections. And you notice that as I'm scrolling to the side, that section is locked, so they can always see the car associated with the data you're seeing. So if I keep scrolling, you notice that all the data that I supplied, and the template has automatically calculated the depreciation. That means that it depreciates at a rate of 3.2 million every year. And the template will also automatically calculate the book value. So since we purchased this car this year, the book value is the same as the purchase value. But if you check it as in by next year, that's 2019, the book value will have reduced by 3.2 million. So this is going to be updated on a yearly, not a monthly basis, but on a yearly basis. So for the all of 2018, the book value and the purchase price is going to be the same. 2019, this value will have reduced by 3.2. 2020, it will have reduced by 6.4. So notice it tells you the number of years. So by next year, this will automatically increase to 1. And you notice other values I supplied, like the daily rental fee, the tank level, and all other details have been populated. So that's my first car. I'm quickly going to add a second car by repeating the process. I simply click on the new vehicle button. It pops up a form, and then I supply the values. So let's assume the second car is also of the same brand. So it's also a Toyota. This time around, it's a Camry. I'm going to leave the vehicle type blank. The transmission is a 6-speed. It's also automatic. It uses gas. The model is 2017. And let's assume we purchased it on the first day of January 2017. Now, the reason I'm using 2017 is I want to demonstrate the depreciation functionality. Next, I enter the chassis number, 17, and I'm going to leave the plate numbers blank. The current mileage, so let's assume it has worked for a year. So let's say it is, done like 80,000 miles. I'm going to leave the insurance details blank. The current fuel level, so let's assume I fill my tank. And this is the tank capacity, usually not a round figure. Now the number of kilometers that 1 liter can do, so let's assume it can only do, 8 point something kilometers. Next, the fuel tank, which is going to be the same as the current fuel level, because I'm filling up my tank. The daily rental fee will be 30,000, and the purchase price, let's assume it was 10 million. So now I've supplied all the necessary fields. Once I click enter, it's going to store this car to my database. Now you notice we have the second row. So every car is going to be represented by a row. The first row is the first car. The second row is the second car. Now as I'm scrolling to the right, you notice that we can still see the vehicle ID here. So we know this data pertains to this particular ID. And I'm just going to scroll to the extreme right where we have our depreciation. And you'll notice now that the book value is different from the purchase price. So we purchased it for 10 million. And since it has a salvage, that's a useful life of 5 years and a salvage value of 0. So that means that every year it reduces by a value of 2 million. And so since we've used the car for a year, we're currently in 2018, you notice that the book value is now 8 million. By next year, it's going to reduce to 6 million, so on. And on the 5th year, it's going to have a value of 0. And you notice number of years tells us 1. So at any point in time, you know the number of years the car has been with you, the current book value based on the depreciation rate. So that's how the first section works. This is where you document all the cars you have. You simply click the new vehicle button, fill all the fields, and click enter. Now, as I said earlier on, not all fields are mandatory. If you click the enter key, it's going to tell you the fields you need to enter. So notice, regardless of the number of times I click enter, the template will refuse to accept data until I supply the brand, the model, the chassis number, the current mileage, the current fuel level, and the kilometer per liter. So these are the only mandatory fields. The other fields are optional. So if you don't have the data, you can always update it later. Now let's assume now I know the type. I can simply double click on the field here and enter the type. So the fields are modifiable. Okay, so in case you don't have, so for instance, the plate number, I simply type whenever I have the plate number and it fills up that field. Okay, so you can always update it. So that's the first functionality. Now to delete any particular car for any reason, so maybe you sell it off or it's damaged or something, you simply click on any cell in the row. Now a row is made up of multiple cells. So the first row, we have the vehicle ID cell, the brand cell, the model cell, the type, and so on. So if I want to delete this first row, I simply need to click on any cell in that row and click delete. The template is then going to ask for a confirmation. Are you sure you want to delete this car? It's also going to tell you the model. So notice this is the sedan 2018. If you do, you click yes. If you don't, you click no. Now I'm just going to click no, but that's how you delete. For the other car, I simply click on any cell in that row, click delete. It's going to tell me this is the Toyota Camry 2017. Do I want to delete it? If I do, I click yes. If I don't, I click no. Okay, so that's how this template works. Next, we move to the maintenance section. So recall we started at the dashboard. We then clicked on the first button, which took us to the vehicle database section. We've added 2 cars. Now we're going to the maintenance section where you document all servicing activities. Now to open it up, you simply click on the label. So notice as I click maintenance, it takes me to that section of the template. So now we're in the maintenance section of the template. Now this is where you document all maintenance activities when you're servicing the car or when the car is undergoing any repair. You notice it has a similar formatting. In the upper left hand corner, we have the title that tells you this is where you document all servicing activities and repair activities. To the right of this, we have 2 buttons: to add a new service, to delete an existing service. Above this, we have our navigation pane with buttons to go to several sections in the template. And below the 2 buttons here, we have our data table where all servicing activities will be listed. You equally notice we have our column headers, and these are the attributes you expected to supply per service. To add a new car maintenance activity, you simply click on the new service button and it pops up a form. The form works exactly the same as the form we just covered. You simply supply values to the white portion of the form. First, to indicate the day that the car is being serviced. By default, Excel is going to enter today, but you can modify any of the values. Now, I'm going to modify the date for the first car to the 20th of May, 2017. So I'm changing the date to 20. I'm leaving the month as May, but I'm changing the year to 2017. Now you can enter a past date, but you cannot enter a future date. So notice if I enter 2019, it tells me invalid date. So you're allowed to backdate or enter the current date, but you can't enter a future date. Next, you select the car that's been serviced, the mileage at service, the mileage after service, the mileage for the next service. Now, depending on your mechanic, they can recommend you service the car after every 5,000 kilometers. It really depends. But here you enter the mileage as at the next service, which in this case, using the 5,000 kilometers would be 65,020 kilometers. So it started at 60,000. It ended at 60,020. So that means the distance from the office to the mechanic workshop and back was 20 kilometers, and this is the expected mileage for the next service. Next, you indicate the maintenance type, and this holds a drop-down list with 4 options: routine service, part replacement, repair, and other. Now later on in the video, I'm going to show you how you can modify these values, so how you can add additional types or remove existing types. So let's assume this is a routine service, and we're changing all the spark plugs. You notice here also we have some default items, and we populated this drop-down list with the most common maintenance activities, things like your AC gas refill, brake pad, battery alignment, and so on. However, you can also modify the values here. You can add additional and pretty much design it to suit your needs. So here I'm going to select the spark plug replacement. Let's assume this cost 8,000, so it's 2,000. We used 4, so that's 8,000. The mechanic charged 2,000. The mechanic's name is John Random, and here you can add a brief summary. So here you can just give additional details to this service activity. Once you're done, you simply click on enter, and it's going to store that service. So you notice the first row is populated with the values we supplied. Now if I scroll to the side, you notice the additional attributes that I supplied. So things like the maintenance type, the cost, the mechanic, and so on. Now the last 2 columns are formula generated columns. That's the total mileage column and the estimated fuel used column. The total mileage, we calculate the total miles, that's in kilometers, used for this activity. Recall that we entered the starting at 60,000 kilometers, the ending at 60,020, so the difference is 20. So the template will automatically calculate that and tell you that for 20 kilometers, the car is going to use an estimate of 2.36 liters. So it will automatically calculate that using the kilometer per liter you specified in the vehicle section. So recall that for the Toyota Camry, we specified in the vehicle section, let's quickly go back there and recall what we entered. We entered that the kilometer per mile is a bit over 8 kilometers per each liter of fuel. So since the trip to the mechanic was 20, if you divide it, you notice that its car will use a bit over 2 liters to go to and fro from this trip. So that's how the template will automatically calculate that for you. And I'm going to add another maintenance activity. I simply repeat the process by clicking New Service. I enter the date of service. Next, I indicate the car that's being serviced, the mileage as at service. In this case, that will be 30,000. The mileage after service, let's assume is the same mechanic workshop, so that's 20 kilometers. The mileage for the next service, I'm going to add 5,000 to that. The maintenance type, let's assume that this is also a routine service, but this time around we're changing the oil. So oil change, let's assume that the oil cost me 4,000. The mechanic charged 2,000, it's the same mechanic, and here I can add any additional details pertaining to the service. Once I'm done, I simply click on the Enter key, and it's going to store this maintenance activity. So now you notice we have two rows. The first row represents the first maintenance for the Toyota Camry. The second represents the maintenance for the 2018 Toyota car. And if I scroll to the right, you notice that the template will automatically calculate the total mileage, which is 20, and the estimated fuel that's supposed to be used, which is 1.76. And it's going to do this for every maintenance activity. So that's pretty much a summary of how this section works. It simply documents all maintenance activities. So whenever you service any car, you need to enter that data to this section. To delete, you simply click on any cell, click delete, and then click on yes. Now, we've covered this section. We've covered the vehicles, the maintenance. We move on to the fuel log section where you document all your purchases of fuel. To open up that section, you simply click on the label. So now we're in the fuel purchase section of the template. As the label says in the upper left-hand corner, this is where you document all purchases of fuel. So whenever you buy additional gas to any of your cars, you document it here. To the right of this, we have two buttons to add a new purchase and to delete an existing purchase. Above this, we have our navigation pane, and below we have our data table where all purchases will be listed. Now to add a new purchase, you simply click on the button, New Purchase, and this pops up an Excel form. Just like forms we've covered, you simply have to supply values to the white portion. By default, Excel enters today as the purchase date. You can modify that. However, you cannot enter a future date. So if I change this to 2019, you notice it tells me invalid date. So you can backdate, you can enter the current date, but you cannot enter a future date. Next, you indicate the car associated with this transaction. I'm going to go ahead and select the Camry, the total number of liters you're purchasing, the reading on your odometer, the price per liter. The template will automatically calculate the total, multiplying the two together. Next, you indicate the driver or the individual that purchased the fuel. Now, this holds a drop-down list and will list all drivers from your driver section. But recall, we haven't yet added any drivers. That's why this list is blank. So I'm going to go ahead and type a random name. Next, you indicate the adjustment. Now, I'm going to come back to this to explain what this does. I'm going to skip this, leaving the default value of no. Next, you enter the filling station, the address, and the local government. Once you're done, you make use of the Enter key to store this purchase. And we should see it listed on the first row. So if I scroll to the right, you see all the other values that I supplied. Now you notice that we have three formula generated columns to the extreme right: the expected fuel level, the fuel percentage, and the difference. Now, the expected fuel level will automatically calculate what this car is supposed to have in your tank based on this purchase. So it tells us that we should have 50 liters or 50.091 liters of fuel in our tank. Now we can confirm how that works. So what the template does is that it goes through your template. So if I go back to the vehicle section, recall that when I entered this template, I indicated that the tank was full. So notice that this is the second row. I enter it as the current fuel level as 50.4567, which is the same as the fuel tank. So this is what we started with, 50.4567. Now from 50.4567, we used from it when we went to service the car. So recall that we had to drive the car for 20 kilometers. So if I go to my maintenance section, recall that for that car, we used part of the fuel. We used 2.36 liters. So the template is going to subtract that. And the template is also, after subtracting that, now going to add what we purchased using the fuel log section. And we just purchased 2 liters. So if I add 2 liters to that, that's plus 2, we should get the balance, which is 50.0917. Okay, so that's how the template arrives at this value, to automatically sum all purchases versus all usages. Okay, so this is the balance we have. And here it's going to tell you the percentage of your tank. So now your tank is almost full, it's 99%. Okay, so it's going to pretty much this over the total tank to tell you the percentage of fuel you have in your car. Okay, now here you enter the actual fuel level, because usually in the real life scenario, the actual might vary from the expected due to several reasons. So this is where you enter the actual fuel in your car. Now the value you enter here, the template will subtract the two together to give you the difference. Okay, now this is to be used majorly when we are tracking adjustments. And you can only track adjustments when you fill up your tank. Right now, you can't be able to, because on your meter, you can't be able to know the exact level of fuel you have. Okay, so later on, I'm going to cover these two columns and how they work together to track adjustments. So that's pretty much how you add whenever you buy fuel. I'm going to do the same for the second car. Click on new purchase. I'm going to select the new car. I'm going to buy only 1 liter. It's going to be the same price. It's going to be purchased by the same person. And I'm just going to leave the filling station blank. Can I? Yes, and it accepts it there. So these are the true transactions. So that's how you keep adding whenever you buy fuel. Now next we go to the requisition section. Now to open it up, you simply click on the label requisition, and that takes us to that section of the template. So now we're in the requisition section of the template. This is where you document all vehicle requests, paid and unpaid. By unpaid, we mean activities like driving the car to the filling station to refuel the tank and other internal activities. Paid activities are commercial activities, so whenever the car is being rented. So you document them all here. To do so, you simply click on the new request button and supply the values. First, you indicate the dates that the car is being requested. Next, you select the car. And once you do, the template will automatically return the daily rental fee using information you supplied in the vehicle section. Notice if I change this to Camry, the value is going to reduce from 40,000 to 30,000 that we specified. Now, if this is an internal activity, for instance, driving to the filling station to buy additional fuel, you can simply replace the fee with 0 as you're not making money from that activity. So the value can always be modified. You can increase it, decrease it, or replace it entirely with 0. I'm going to go ahead and reselect so that the default value comes back. I'm going to enter project 1, a very generic name. It's going to be Abuja Municipal. I'm going to leave the activity blank. Next, I need to enter the driver that's going to drive the car for this period. Now, the list is blank because we don't have drivers. So when you add drivers, it will automatically populate this list. Next, you enter the number of days. So let's assume it's being rented for 3 days. The template calculates the total. And lastly, you need to specify the starting mileage. Notice if I click enter, the template is going to say I must specify the mileage as at when the car has been taken away. So I'm going to enter a random value here. Please, these are random values. They might not make any practical sense. Now, the ending mileage is optional, as more often than not, you will not know what the ending kilometer is until after the 3 days. So this is usually optional. You can always come back when you receive the car to update this value. And once you're done, you simply click on enter, and it's going to store that requisition. So you notice the first row has been populated with the values we supplied. Now you notice that 2 columns are going to be highlighted in red, the total mileage and the estimated fuel. The reason for this is to remind you that there's the value missing in this transaction. You haven't entered the ending odometer value. So this way, it's possible after 3 days you receive the car and you forget to update the template. So the red tells you there's a problem with this transaction, so you know you need to enter the ending odometer. I'm just going to go ahead and enter 54,900. And the template will automatically calculate that. That means the entire trip was 222 kilometers and 19 liters of fuel was used within that period. This is what my balance should be, 39 liters, which is 64% of my tank. So the template will automatically calculate that data for you. So now you know that your tank should be at the level of 64, and this is the figure, that's 39 liters. So for any request, the template will automatically calculate that for you. Now, in real life, The estimated value will vary from the actual value. This can be for several reasons. So maybe the quality of the fuel that you purchased, maybe your exhaust might be open and so your car consumes more fuel. There's so many factors that can make the actual fuel level, that's the percentage left, vary from what the template says it's supposed to be. Now, there's a functionality added to the template called adjustment to be able to create the balance. So recall that in the fuel section, so if I go back to the section we covered earlier on, there were two columns I skipped. I skipped the adjustment column and the actual fuel column. And these two columns will be used or should be used to balance the data so that the actual and the estimated will be the same. Now, it's advisable that on a monthly basis, or preferably maybe the last day of the month, for all of your vehicles, you adjust it such that the expected fuel level the template says is the same as what you have in your car. Now, to do that, let me just demonstrate the process. So based on all our transactions now, the template tells us that I'm going to use the other car that we just added a requisition for, which is our sedan. So it tells us that our sedan as at today should have 39.0264 liters. Now, recall that in the vehicle section, we wrote the tank level of this car. And we said that this car can take a total of 60.5666 liters of fuel. So we can go back to that section so that you just remember. Remember, when we're adding cars, one of the columns we had to supply is the fuel tank. And we specify that for this particular car, the fuel tank can take 60.566 liters. So this is full tank. Now, based on this full tank level, the template is telling us that what we have for this particular car, or what we should have, is 39.0264. Now, once you find the difference between the two, based on the template, that's what you're supposed to buy to have a full tank. So if you do the math, it's a bit over 21 liters. So that means if you go to the filling station and you buy 21 liters, your tank is supposed to be 100%. Now, it's possible that's not the case. So maybe when you go to the filling station to buy fuel, you end up buying 30 liters of fuel. So what you need to do is two things. First of all, you need to add a fuel purchase with the exact number to fill up your tank. So you enter the date, you select the car, and the liters you enter is the exact number that the template tells you you need to fill up that tank. Now, once you enter that value, and I'm just going to enter random odometer values just to fill up space. And lastly, I need to enter who purchased the fuel. The adjustment here should still be no. Once I click enter, it's going to store that. Now, based on this data, our tank should be full according to the template data. So notice it says our tank level is 100%. However, we had to buy more than that. We had to buy 30. So what you need to do is that you enter a second transaction with the difference. You enter the same date, you select the car, and then you enter the additional liters you had to buy. So maybe you had to buy 9.65 additional liters to fill up your tank. You enter the odometer reading, which will be the same as what you just entered here. The only difference in what you specify here is that the adjustment here will be yes. So what this does is you're telling the template that this liters is just for adjustment purposes. So it's not going to increase your fuel level and your fuel percentage. The template is just going to store this for documentation purposes. So at the end of the month, you can know the total amount you spent on adjustments. So I'm just going to enter the same values again. Who purchased it? There we go. Click enter. And you notice that our percentage doesn't change. It's still 100%. So the template, once the adjustment is specified as yes, the template is not going to add the liters to the estimated fuel level. It's going to recognize that this is just the adjustment based on one or two factors that your company will determine later on. Okay, so that's what the adjustment functionality does, so that your estimated fuel level and your car level will be the same, probably at the end of the month or at the start of the new month. Now, the choice is on you. You can decide as a company whenever you want to do the adjustment. If you want to do it monthly, quarterly, weekly, the choice is really yours. But it's necessary to do it, as in reality, your actual and estimated values will vary. So let me just explain the process of doing that again. What you need to do is you need to fill up your tank, because the only way you can know the actual level of fuel in your car is when your tank is full. Now, when you fill up your tank, you simply identify what the template said you needed to fill your tank. The difference between the two is the adjustment. You enter the transactions twice. The first value you enter will be what the template required of you, which is 21.542. The second transaction will be the adjustment amount that is causing the variance between what you have and what the template says you should have. Okay? And once you do that, that's all. The adjustment has been noted. Okay, so that covers the major sections of the template. That's the vehicles, maintenance, fuel, requisition. Next, we move to our expenses section. I'm not going to spend so much time here. This is just where you document business expense. Now, generally, we have two types of business expenses. We have your indirect costs, what we call your overhead costs, things like rent, utility, transportation, and all of that. And if I click the list, these are the default options we have: advertising, office, rent, salaries, etc. So these are your indirect costs. And we have direct costs, which you call cost of service. Now, cost of service, some businesses have, others might not really have distinct cost of service. This basically a cost that are directly linked to a service you render. So for instance, in our requisition section, we indicated that this car was rented for 3 days. Now, it's possible that because of this order, we had to employ an ad hoc staff to drive the car. That's not someone that's part of our regular payroll, that's a cost of service. So it's any cost that is directly linked to an order. So it's pretty much money that you would not spend except you get this order. Okay, so that's the difference between the two. Notice that for some other costs, for instance, salaries, you're going to pay yourself salary whether you rent your car or not. But there's some costs that you only spend because you got an order from a client. Those are what we call the cost of service. So to enter an expense, you simply enter the date. Next, you indicate the expense. You give details, for instance, Facebook adverts campaign, the cost you spent. Template calculates the total cost and you click on enter. So that's how you add expenses. Very simple. You click new purchase, you select the category, you give additional detail, the unit cost, quantity, and total cost. So that covers the expenses section. It's just a way to track all of your expenses. Lastly, we go to the driver section. Now, as I referenced earlier on, this is just where you document all driver detail. As you will notice, all the fields you supplied or you sent in the template plan have been listed here. So we have the name, date of birth, and so on. It works the same way. Simply click on new driver, supply all the values, and then click on enter. I'm going to compare this functionality as it works just like other sections. And lastly, we have the vendor section. So once you click vendors, it takes you there. Works exactly the same way. You click on new vendor and supply all the values and then click on enter. Now we're going to go to the reports. So going back to the dashboard, recall that the third thumbnail had our reports. Now the template has a total of 5 reports. Well, 4 reports. The last is not really a report, it's a functionality that enables you edit your drop-down list. So first I'm going to cover the drop-down list. Now once you click, it takes you to that section. This is just where you modify the 3 drop-down lists in the template. Now most likely you don't need to modify the last drop-down list adjustments, but you might need to add additional maintenance types. So recall that in the maintenance section, when we clicked on new service, the drop-down list had 4 options. Now if I want to modify any of these options, I simply make use of that section, the drop-down list. You notice that, for instance, if I change this to other service, so I've modified the 4th value. If I go back to my maintenance section, new service, we now have other service. So the values you supply there determine what's displayed in the drop-down list. I'm just going to change that back to other. In the same way, for the service item, you can add additional items or you can modify existing items. Okay, so that's what the last button does. It takes you to that section where you can modify drop-down lists. The first report is very self-explanatory. This is your income report. All you do here is it tells you your report or your income on a monthly basis. At the top, you select the year, and then you select the months, and the template will automatically list all transactions in that month. Now, we have only one transaction in May. That's why that's the only transaction listed. The next report is the vehicle report, and this enables you select a particular vehicle, give a time frame. So I can give a start date and an end date. And once I click refresh, the template will automatically list all requisitions for this car, all maintenance activities, and all fuel purchases. It's equally going to break it down here. So we have our requisition summary, only 1. This is it. Maintenance summary, only 1. And our purchase summary, we purchased fuel twice. So it will automatically list that for you. If I change the car and refresh, it automatically updates. So for this particular car, no requisitions, no maintenance, but we've purchased fuel twice. Okay, so that's how easy it does it for you. To automatically give you a summary for that car, breaking it into 3 categories: requisition, maintenance, and fuel purchase. The next report, which is the third report, is the adjustment report. It basically gives you an adjustment summary. So it works the same way. First, you select the car, you enter the start date, the end date, and the template will tell you if within that period there was any adjustment activity. So once I click refresh, there was only 1, and this is the one adjustment activity. So this way, for every car, you can create this report on a monthly basis to know the total amounts that was spent in regards to adjustments. Okay, you can do this for any time frame. So I use the year, you can use a quarter, you can use a month. Now, if you omit any of the values, if you click refresh, the template will tell you that you need to select the ID and enter the date range. Okay, so you need to supply the 3 fields for the template to refresh the report. And our last report is a profit and loss statement. This just enables you to see your total income on a monthly basis from January up until December, the cost of service, and your expenses. All you need to do is to click on refresh. The template will automatically sum it up. So you know in the month of May, you earned 120,000 and you spend 20,000 on advertising, giving you a profit of 100,000. So it automatically do that for the 12 calendar months. So right now it's showing you for the 1st of January 2018 to December 2018. You can change this. If I scroll to the right in the upper right hand corner, if I change this to 2019, you notice that all the values will automatically update. So now we have 2019 on all the month fields. And if I scroll, you notice that at the top here, we equally have 1st of January 2019 to December 2019. So that's how you control the data. You notice everything is blank because we have no transaction for 2019. So that's how dynamic the template is. I'm going to change it back to 2018. And my last demonstration before I end the video is I'm going to quickly add a transaction for January so that you can see how dynamic the template is. I'm just going to quickly go back to my requisition and I'm going to add a new request, but I'm going to backdate to January. I'm going to select any car. As I said, this is just for demonstration purposes. This can just be project 2. Let's assume we're renting it for 3 days. We need to enter the driver's name. Once I click enter, okay, I need to enter the mileage. Once I click enter, it's going to store that value. Okay, so now we've earned income in the month of January. We've earned a total of 40 times 3, which is 120. So if I go back to my reports, we should see 120 for the month of January. So there we go, we have 120,000. So that's how dynamic the template is. So automatically tell you on a monthly basis your revenue, your cost of service, and the amount you spend in the income categories or the expense categories here. Now, these categories can be modified because it's possible that, for instance, maybe you don't do any advertising. So you can change this to, for instance, internet subscription. And once you change the categories here, the template will automatically update the drop-down list in the expense section. So you notice that now it should say internet subscription. Okay, so that's how you modify your overhead costs. You simply do it using a profit and loss statement. Okay, the reason for this is it's possible that you might have some cost peculiar to your business that you want to track. So this template enables you to do that conveniently. So that's the summary of how the template works.